Gunpowder. When you hear of gunpowder, the first thing that comes to mind is absolute destruction. I mean, this stuff was the cause of a lot of suffering and damage during wars. But first, the gunpowder was actually medicine. Yes, medicine. You see, the main ingredient of gunpowder is saltpeter, aka potassium nitrate, which has been used as medicine by Chinese monks for centuries. The monks decided that their lives were just too short, and in typical monk mode, decided to make an elixir for longer lives. Upon further experimentation, the monks combined saltpeter with charcoal and sulfur. While this mixture did not grant everlasting life, it did have excellent flammable and explosive properties when ignited. Initially, their invention was used to create fireworks by the Chinese, but soon enough, the people found a better use for the explosive invention. Gunpowder was now applied as a weapon of destruction during wars, and as early as 904 AD, this accidental invention unleashed a brutal, destructive force that wreaked havoc across the four corners of the earth, as they were used in wars, battles, and revolutions. So maybe the monks should have just stuck to eating vegetables and exercising daily for a longer life. Matchsticks. If you had to constantly strike two stones against each other repeatedly and blow on dry wood just to get fire, I'm sure making a quick cup of tea would have become a very tedious task. However, thanks to a certain British chemist named John Walker, we now have matchsticks. The whole invention of quick fire on a stick all started in 1826, when John was just casually working in his chemistry lab, mixing different chemicals and probably daydreaming about the periodic table. Mid-work, he noticed dried up crusty lumps at the end of his mixing stick and tried to scrape the crust off as any sensible person would. In the attempt to get his mixing stick clean, the friction from scraping against the crust quickly burst into flames. You'd have probably run off like a mad person thinking it was magic. But for John, who was also a businessman, this was the perfect business idea. He figured out what caused the flame and quickly started coating sticks with the chemical to sell as portable instant fire, which he called friction lights. John sold his friction lights for $1 per box in his bookstore, but ever the gentleman, he refused to patent his flamey invention because he believed that sharing his invention with the world was way more important than becoming the Bill Gates of his time. And wouldn't you know it, other inventors copied his flamey invention and equally started selling and distributing matchsticks. Viagra. AKA the blue pill, AKA blue diamond, the best-selling medication for erectile dysfunction, was actually being researched for treating high blood pressure. It was 1990 and scientists were testing a new drug, sildenafil, for the treatment of congestive heart failure, which was meant to dilate the heart's blood vessels. But you see, sildenafil, the active ingredient in Viagra, had a side effect on the men who participated in the clinical trials. The drug was making their organ very hard and erect for long periods. The female nurses first noticed this side effect when men began to act strangely around them. They would lie on their stomachs whenever the nurses entered their rooms to conceal their state of erection because they were rightfully embarrassed. Eventually, one nurse reported this strange behavior to the doctor in charge, and after further tests were done, it appeared that the blood vessels dilating were in their penis, and not the heart that was initially intended for. The sildenafil was definitely working, but in the wrong part of the body. Soon after this discovery was made, Pfizer announced the drug as the miracle pill for erectile dysfunction, and Viagra was born. Microwave oven. The dull halogen lights, the spinning glass plate, and the humming sound that signals done can be found in almost 90% of homes and businesses worldwide today and are used to heat everything from popcorn to pork ribs in a hurry. A man named Percy Spencer was the genius behind the accidental discovery of this indispensable kitchen appliance, and everything began in the 1900s. Spencer was an engineer working for radar technology on a machine called magnetrons, which sounds like the fictional planet of Optimus Prime, but were just fancy tubes that generated radar technology. One day, Spencer is messing around with the magnetron when he realizes that he is quite hungry. He remembers the peanut butter candy bar he had and reaches into his pocket to grab the treat, but he only grabs the sticky, gooey aftermath of what was supposed to be his chocolate. So the guy is just standing there wondering what the hell happened, when it dawned on him that the microwaves were responsible for his melted snack, which quickly got him thinking of all the other possibilities this discovery could have. If microwaves could melt chocolates, then what else could they possibly do? So he threw some popcorn in front of the magnetron, and sure enough, they popped. And just like the smart engineer he was, Percy set out to create the world's first ever microwaves. The first microwaves were not like what you see in your kitchen today, and were actually called radar range, which weighed about the size of a small car. It cost $5,000 and honestly looked like some sort of radioactive monster, so it wasn't really a huge hit at first. Eventually, the size was reduced to fit on a kitchen counter, and this reduced the cost drastically. Penicillin. If you were living back in the era before penicillin was invented and got pricked by something as little as a nail, you'd probably die from blood poisoning, because the only things your doctors could do was clean your wound with hot water and pray. During this time, there was nothing to treat infections. But thanks to Dr. Alexander Fleming, we now have a very effective cure: penicillin. However, the history of this miracle drug was quite dirty, to say the least. See, the good Dr. Fleming had a thing against cleaning his equipment, so he always left them dirty after use. So on one of those occasions, he returned to his laboratory to start another day at work when he found mold growing on a petri dish. Now, mold growing on a dirty petri dish shouldn't be so surprising, but what was curious about this particular mold was that there was nothing else around it. He studied it more and discovered that the mold seemed to stop the bacteria around it from growing. He did more research and realized that the mold itself produced a self-defense chemical that could kill bacteria, and after some tests on people, penicillin would go on to save millions of lives. Tea bags. So it's 1910, and Thomas Sullivan wants to find the cheapest possible way to send tea to customers, as opposed to the very expensive metal boxes that were the common practice. In his defense, the boxes were thrown away after the tea in them was finished, so the guy was just trying to work smarter. Thomas, in his quest to find a cheaper alternative, decided to send his tea samples in small hand-sewn silk bags to his customers. When Sullivan's customers received their tea samples, they were puzzled by how they came, and because they had never seen tea samples sent in silk bags, they put the whole bag in the mug and just poured hot water over the entire thing. And just like that, a super easy and less messy way of making tea was discovered. The customers loved this new style and ordered more tea bags from Sullivan, and soon enough, everybody wanted one. This accidental invention gave Sullivan the idea to start selling tea in those little silk bags officially, which made his business grow beyond his expectations, and the cheapskate quickly became a millionaire. Snow globes. Have you ever just sat and thought that the lighting in your house was just too dim, so you go to the grocery store to buy brighter ones to fix the situation? Well, in the 19th century, a man called Irwin Percy had the same problem, where he thought the light bulb was just not bright enough. The problem was he couldn't just walk into Walmart and order new bulbs, so he decided to fix the problem himself. Irwin's genius idea, however, was to add loads of water and tiny white particles into the light bulb. I don't particularly understand how he thought water was the solution to his problem, but maybe Irwin wasn't that bright. Anyways, the light bulb obviously didn't get brighter, but something else happened. The white flaky particles he added began to float around the water in a manner that looked like falling snowflakes, and this reminded Irwin of Christmas. And wouldn't you know it, Irwin came up with his very first bright idea of the day. He made more of the watery particle-filled bulbs and named them snow globes. The snow globes became such a huge piece at an exposition in Paris where people fell in love with the snowfall effect the globe had when it was shaken, and over time it became a great souvenir and gift when an Australian man designed to add a model of the Eiffel Tower inside the globe to make it look cooler. Ice cream cones. Helping someone else out when they're in need has always been a great virtue, especially when it helped birth one of the world's best combinations of snacks and desserts. It was the 1900s and the middle of the St. Louis World's Fair, which was a major center of exhibition for all the coolest inventions at the time, and anyone was allowed to come in and have a look around. Just a few meters from the entrance of the fair was a young man named Ernest Hamwi, who was selling a waffle-like pastry called a waffle cookie. Next to him was an ice cream vendor, Arnold Forneshow, who had run out of paper cups to sell ice cream. The good neighbor Ernest saw his predicament and decided to help out by rolling his waffle pastry into a cone and offering it over to the ice cream guy. Soon, customers started buying the ice cream and discovered that the cone cup was also edible and very tasty. So bam, the ice cream cone was invented. Potato chips. So it all started one day in 1853 when Chef George Crumb was working at one of New York's finest restaurants when a certain very picky customer named Vanderbilt, who is also the catalyst to the potato chip invention, sent back his french fries with the complaint that they were too thick, soggy, and tasteless. Chef Crumb, who was already in a bad mood that day, got furious at Vanderbilt's complaint and, in one of the pettiest revenge ever, took back the french fries, sliced them as thinly as he could, and fried them till they got super crispy. As if that wasn't enough, he went on to dump half a jar of salt on the fried chips. Chef Crumb was probably very happy with his little stunt, but the response he wanted from Vanderbilt was entirely different. Vanderbilt actually fell in love with the dried up salty chips and even declared them the next best thing after flying airplanes. Yeah, Vanderbilt, I think you're going too far with that one. Soon the news of the salty, crispy potato chips spread round the city, and everyone flocked to Chef Crumb's restaurant like wildfire, demanding a taste. Superglue. Well, this one was quite a sticky and bizarre situation. The accidental invention of superglue all started when a Dr. Harry Coover was asked to design a new type of clear plastic gun for World War II. You're probably wondering how a plastic gun was supposed to help soldiers win a war, and I'm sure the doctor thought the same. Nevertheless, he got to work. During the whole experiment, Dr. Harry was testing a new cyanoacrylate formula that was supposed to be very strong plastic, but the formula kept sticking to everything it touched, and at one point even stuck the doctor's fingers together. The whole idea of creating plastic guns for soldiers came to a halt as soon as the doctor and his team realized they were onto something much more promising. Everybody on the team focused on finding out everything they could about the sticky formula, and for over 10 years, the doctors tried to refine the substance. They eventually broke through in 1958 and found the perfect balance for the formula, later naming that product Superglue. Stainless steel. The next time you're enjoying a dinner by way of a rust-free fork or cutlery, remember to thank 20th century arms manufacturer for hiring Harry Brayley, the English metallurgist who developed a non-rusty gun barrel. While working at Brown Firth Laboratories in England, Brayley was researching ways to improve the erosion resistance of gun barrels, meaning he was trying to make them stop rusting, when he accidentally discovered that by adding 12.8% chromium to iron, it produced a metal that was significantly resistant to rust. Once this was discovered, improvements came rapidly, and factories began manufacturing surgical tools and cutlery from the material. Even beer was now stored in stainless steel tanks, because they were equally highly resistant to corrosion by storing nitric acid. Today, stainless steel is one of the most important metals in use, and is 100% recyclable, and can be reprocessed with its quality reduction.